Alrighty. So we're back for another sculpting video. I really feel like I probably should be able to finish up sculpting today because we're just going to do some gear stuff. I feel like we've done enough with the tools on this guy to show off kind of that in a pretty decent manner. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my crab gear on. Remember, your body should be one object, your crab gear should be one object. Remember, if you double click, you can actually rename these, right? So you'll notice they're usually just generic, like cube 0.01 if you've duplicated. But you can double click and rename them, right? You also see you have these little eyeballs here, and this allows you to control the visibility, right? Now, I've mentioned this before. You've seen it in other videos. And it's going to come up plenty more as we have more videos throughout the term, right? Or particularly throughout the year. So, crab gear, we'll just turn that on. And in this case, if we want to, we could turn the visibility off of the other object for now. We can leave it on. It's kind of up to you. I'll turn it off for now just so you can kind of just see just the crab gear. In this case, you can see I'm in the sculpting, right? Sculpting workspace here. I'm going to make sure to, the object's already selected, right? So you can just click on it here, make sure it's selected. And this has to have its own multi-resolution modifier applied, right? So remember, our blue wrench is where our modifiers are at. Then I go up to this pull-down menu, click on Add Modifier, and we add multi-resolution, right? So we add multi-resolution right there. Just like we did with the crab body, right? And now that we have the multi-resolution modifier up, we can see there's some options here, right? We could see that there's the subdivision levels here, and this really just allows you to go up and down the levels, right? You have to open up the subdivision one to actually truly subdivide it. Now there's options down here. We're not really going to lead linear right now. We'll see this more when we do some of our hard surface stuff for our environment. But that will subdivide it without rounding the shape off. That's good for really boxy things like tables and walls and stuff like that. But the normal subdivide here just uses the rounding algorithm, right? The Catmull-Clark subdivision surface algorithm. Except it subdivides it for real, right? Where a subdivision surface modifier kind of applies it virtually, right? You're still kind of working on the low res. And you see kind of the more rounded one with more polygons, but you're not interacting with those polygons. Multi-resolution actually lets you interact with those polygons, right? So I subdivide, and now you see that we're at level 1. We can see I've got a few more triangles there. I can subdivide again, where we've got more triangles. Subdivide again, more triangles. Now remember, I'm working at 2.9, so the modifiers look a little bit different than they would be in 2.83. Not radically different, but a little bit. So you should still have a lot of these features in there, and it's just a question of knowing that they're there and that you just have to look for them. Like I said, at this point, hopefully you guys have all downloaded 2.9. It's a stable version, works great. Remember, it's super easy. You just download it just like you did before, and you install it. Or in case if it's portable, you don't have to install it, right? You can just run the executable. And when you launch 2.9 for the first time, it'll actually pull up the screen again, and you could turn on Instant Compatible or Blender 2.7x series. Or you could you'll see there's kind of a bottom kind of in the bottom left corner of that splash screen that comes up, because when you run 2.9 for the first time, it'll come up like it's brand new, like the first time you started Blender 2.83. And like I said, that's where you can pick like industry compatible if you want. But you'll notice in the bottom left corner of that splash screen, it says basically you want to load or import the 2.83 settings and preferences. And you just click that, and it'll actually load any quick keys and all your preferences from 2.83. So upgrading Blender to new versions is painless. So there's no reason at this point, hopefully you guys haven't done that, right? Because 2.83 does have some cool features, not all of which we're going to see quite yet, but we might as well be running at 2.9, right? So subdividing, but in 2.9, this is kind of in its own little menu now to open up, whereas before it was kind of all out in the open. But that stuff's all still there. And this right here, actually, if you go to the little pull down here, it's in statistics. 2.83 won't have that. You'll just see the statistics down here at the bottom, which if you actually right-click here, you can actually turn it on there. So if you want it back on down here, you just kind of right-click on the 2.9 in the bottom right corner, and you can actually turn that stuff back on there. So this stuff is still available down here. It's just, by default, it's off now. And I kind of like it more here anyways. It's more visually there and easy to see. So I like going to here, statistics, to be able to see that stuff. Let's see your polygon counts and all that stuff. So now we can see we're at a couple 100,000. And I want a little more because I'm going to do some masking with you. It's one of the things I want to show you guys is a couple of the other stroke options we have and how masking works with this armor. So I'm going to subdivide again, get up to 400,000, 500,000. I think for the masking this will work well, and then as maybe we do a little more detailing, we can subdivide it one more time. Remember, subdivide as much as your computer or your device can handle, right? If you really start to notice massive lag or lots of crashes, which I've never noticed with Blender. Blender is quite stable, actually, in my personal experience of the last several months. But, you know, it depends on how powerful your device is, how powerful your computer is. I can get up to easily 20, 30, 40 million on my computer at home, and it works pretty well, and it's stable, and the performance is pretty good. Might not be exactly the same for you, so kind of be cognizant that maybe you don't want to push up to 30 million polygons. You know, maybe a couple 100,000, maybe a few million. But I think this will be good for this moment right here. All right. So remember, you just add that multi-resolution modifier. You open up this to subdivide. These will allow you to go back down the levels. So you see as we kind of click on this one, it'll go back down. Although right now you're not seeing it happen. That's because this is the viewport level when you're not in sculpting. So it'll show it at kind of the max level when you're in other tools. So remember, even when you're in the sculpting menu, 5 is the quick key to put you in sculpt mode, right? You can actually turn sculpt mode on even if you're in the modeling stuff, right? And when you're in sculpt mode, it automatically turns on that X symmetry, right? You can turn on Y and Z. You can actually turn them all on at the same time, believe it or not. It's kind of cool. There's even a radial option, which can be useful for certain things. So we'll actually take advantage of that, believe it or not, when we do some stuff for our environment modeling, but not this project. So just kind of remember that stuff, right? But 5 is your sculpt mode, right? So remember, this little pull down has those modes, but there are good quick keys for them already. So 5 is sculpt mode. And now you'll see that kind of this sculpt level changes. You're probably not seeing that much here until you get to the lower levels, but you see that that will change. So if you're in a non-sculpt mode, it'll just default to the level that this one's at. But when you're in sculpt mode, it'll actually use this one for its different levels. And of course, 4 is the max. That's the top. Kind of, you see, we can't go higher because we haven't subdivided. But that's all it's really doing is this is adding more polygons. It's taking each quad, subdividing it into 4 smaller quads, subdividing those 4 smaller quads into 4 more smaller quads. And this is the secret to all the little details you see in video games: the brick details, the wrinkles on clothing, the scales on a dragon. They just, in Zbrush or Mudbox, or in this case Blender, just applied a multi-resolution sculpting feature and really just subdivided it a lot, right? You're just adding lots of polygons to be able to sculpt that. So what I want to show you here is masking and some of the filter features it has. And then we'll probably do a little bit with some different strokes. So of course we can go over here and we have our brushes. And we've really been focusing mostly on the blue ones, right? Crease, draw sharp. You can always play with some of these other ones if you want to experiment. There is the smooth brush, right? That's that shift smooth. Remember, you can always go back to your brush properties themselves, right? The wrench and the screwdriver up here, and you can always turn strength off, right? See the kind of the one that's looks like 2 different paint brushes. If you turn that off, the strength will no longer be unified through all the brushes, so that you can have different strengths for different brushes. So like we can have this strength at 0.35, and then this strength could be lower, right? So that's actually, it's a neat feature. And you saw that in the kind of chat we did the other day. I like to have it off usually, but it's really cool that it does that. So it is actually a neat feature. You just kind of just be aware that it's there. All right, and we'll see some of these other brushes and later stuff. We don't need all of these quite yet. I don't want to show you every brush. So I'm going to scroll down some more. And we saw a little bit of pinch when we were doing some of the sculpting on the crab. So what I want to do is I want to go way down here, right? And you see there's like a little scroll bar here, so you can just use your scroll wheel on your mouse. And you see there's one called mask. And there's actually box masking and things like that. But we want this one that looks like circles and spheres, because that's the paint mask, right? So I could turn that on, and you'll notice, and I'll just use the bracket keys, right? Left and right bracket can make your brushes bigger or smaller. Of course, that's just the radius here. And I'm just going to left-click drag. And I think I'll make the strength 100. So it's going to paint it fully. And you see what we could do here is we could actually paint this mask. So I'm just left-click dragging. And what this allows us to do is paint masking. Now, this is a lot like, particularly from the students that had me last year when we did some Mudbox stuff, this is a lot like the freeze functionality in there, except it's actually even better and nicer. And it has the color coding of Zbrush's masking. So if you're ever in Zbrush and doing masking, you'll see it kind of paints this dark kind of grayish black color. So we're just going to paint some masking kind of around the edges here, right? And I could always make it a little cleaner and crisper than this with a smaller brush. You could always turn on the stabilize stroke if you wanted to. In this case, I don't think I need that, but I'm just going to paint the mask here. There we go. And of course, I'm going to do something on this side as well. There we go. And you can let the masking get as intricate as you want. Like I said, you could turn on stabilize stroke to make the stroke a bit cleaner and smoother through there. It's up to you. I don't mind a little bit of roughness on this one. There we go. And of course, I'm doing this with the mouse. If you guys have Wacom tablets, this software, of course, works with a Wacom tablet and pen. But it doesn't need it, right? You can always just use a mouse. If you hold down Control, it'll paint the mask out, right? So just like our regular sculpting tools, Control inverses the brush. So in this case, Control will paint the mask out. So if you kind of overdo it or you want to kind of trim some stuff down a little bit, you do that. And Shift actually will blur it. So you see you can actually soften it. So believe it or not, your Shift and Control features basically still do something very similar with the masking. So remember, Control basically is inverts the brush, so it'll paint the mask out, and Shift will kind of allow you to blur it or smooth the mask and soften it. So that'll work pretty well for there. We could always add a little more if we wanted to in other areas, but this will be good enough to show off what we want to show off. So I painted this mask. Now in this case, the masking, if I switch to say like my regular draw brush, you'll notice when I go here to sculpt, and I still have that other stroke on there, so let me maybe undo that and turn this texture off. So if you want to, you just kind of click on the X, right? And the texture's still there, but it's no longer plugged in. So you can always turn that off just by clicking on the X, and it just doesn't have the texture here now, even though it's still available there. If I go back to stroke, I don't want anchored anymore. I want it set back to space, which is a good default. If you're ever in any doubt, just turn your stroke method to space. All the other strokes are actually really cool, but space is kind of a good default a lot of the time. And that's actually usually what it's on default. And now you'll see if I go here and I left click the sculpt, you see how when I try to sculpt the mask, it won't sculpt? So that's really neat. That's what the masking is doing, is it's basically making it so that the normal areas won't be affected. Basically anything that's kind of blackish, kind of gray color, in this case tan because it's kind of like a black overlay, is not going to be affected. Now the thing is, you'll see up here in the sculpting menu there is an area called mask, and you can actually clear mask, Control A. You can invert mask, Control I. You can grow and shrink or smooth or sharpen the mask, right? You can even extract geometry based on that mask. So the masking features in Blender are right up there with ZBrush's, a lot better than a lot of other sculpting software like even Modas or Mudboxes. So the overall masking in Blender, quite cool. We don't need to do all those things. I'm just going to invert mask, right? So that way it flips it so that this part is masked, right? Because this was a lot easier to paint than the rest of it. So it's kind of sometimes easier just to paint the area you want to do stuff to and then invert the mask, right? So you could totally invert mask, Control I. I'm going to scroll down here though, because I want to go back down to these tools, and you'll see there's actually a cloth filter. We're going to get into that later on. There is actually a cloth brush for sculpting cloth simulation, and even a filter for running. It's really cool, actually. We don't need it on this guy. This will be the kind of thing we'll see later on when we do some of our environment modeling and our more advanced creature modeling, right? We'll eventually work some cloth in, and it's going to be cool to be able to show those off. The only other software I've ever seen that does this is actually ZBrush, and ZBrush just added it. Blender actually beat ZBrush to the punch on this one. It's really cool. And they improved it. That was actually in 2.83, but they added this in 2.9, which is quite cool. We want mesh filter though, right? So it's kind of the circle with the kind of blue squiggly box thing. So I'm going to click on mesh filter. And what that does, you see how there's a feature up here. Because what this does is it's actually going to allow us to kind of drag in the viewport without, it's not a brush normally. You can actually have it use face sets, which is really cool. We'll see that later on as well. Not on this project, but later projects. It'll work on all the axes, although you can tell it to work on just one if you want to. You can play with the strength setting. But if you go here, there's a pull down. And right now it's set to inflate, which is actually what we want. We want it to be inflate. But you could smooth, scale, relax, sharpen. And what it does is it applies it to the whole thing. So I'm going to go to inflate. And strength 1's fine, XYZ is fine. If I left click drag in the viewport, you see how it actually pushes those polygons out that aren't masked? And if I drag to the left, it pushes them in, right? So this can be a way that you can actually create nice, easy ridging all over your mesh, right? So super cool, very neat that you can do that. You can even switch to, say, like sharpen if you want to, and just left click drag, and it'll sharpen those edges up for you a little bit, right? So these filters that it has are actually really, really cool. And you could play around with them, do a lot of different stuff. So this is one of those things that I'm like, I wish Modo had this. I wish Mudbox had this. Zbrush actually does have a version of this, but this one's just a lot easier to use. So Blender's actual sculpting tools are actually quite awesome, quite impressive. And this is one of the things I want to start to show you guys that you could do. This is going to be cool for, like, if you ever want to do much more intricate engraving, you just create a nice cleaner mask and just like pull up engraved like inlay detail on armor, right? So, and you notice inflate was pushing everything along the normal directions, right? We've kind of talked about that a little bit. Remember, normal direction is really just the direction of a polygon faces, right? So these polygons are kind of pointing that way, right? And these polygons right here are pointing this way. And that's what it does. Inflate pushes these polygons that aren't masked out along their normal directions, right? Your Extrude Normals feature, solidify, right? Those actually kind of move stuff along normal direction, right? And that's what inflate's doing. It's just doing it as a sculpting tool. So you can see that that's a super, super cool feature that we have here that we can do stuff with. And at this point, you know, I can just kind of, I can actually leave this one on if I want to, but I could also just switch back to regular draw. If I go to mask, remember you can clear mask, right? Control A is the quick key for that. And now your mask is gone, right? Now, like I said, I could have maybe painted that a little bit better, a little cleaner. Probably had a stabilized stroke on to make it a little smoother. But I really just want to show you guys what the inflate feature does and how cool that can be for doing certain kinds of details on this guy. Now what I wanted to do is I just want to show you a couple of other stroke types that you can use. And you could use these with just your regular draw brush. So I went back up to the top to select draw brush. I am going to go to brush, and you'll see in the brush there's an area called hardness, right? And you could turn this up to kind of sharpen up and make your brush edge harder, right? So now you see when I sculpt, it kind of pushes this a bit harder, right? The edges are harder there. So keep that in mind, right? My spacing, I want it to be lower. Set that to 10%. And you see how kind of just the edges are harder there, right? So there actually is a brush level control called hardness, which is really cool. Now in this case, with that set a bit higher, maybe set a little higher than this, that should be good. I can go to stroke, and in the stroke method at the very top is something called drag dot. Now, of course, strength plays in this as well. If I want it to be larger, I can turn strength up there. Maybe make my brush a little bigger. And I can just left click drag rivets on here. Now in this case, this is actually working pretty well at 500,000, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Probably do one more sculpting video for you guys to do maybe some other little detailing here. But drag dot, right? That's what that could do. Now if I just set it to dots, it's really just kind of like that, right? So for me, there's not much of a difference between dots and space, right? Even airbrush, you know, kind of like that, kind of randomizes it. So for me, probably the biggest ones I use are things like space, drag dot, anchored. We saw anchored on this the crab. What I want to do now is I want to show you guys the line tool, right? So remember, there's all these cool stroke methods, and this was drag dot, right? So if you have a highness strength, if you go to brush and you turn up hardness, right? And then you go to stroke here and you turn on drag dot, you can make rivets, right? Super, super easy. Really, really cool. But I want to go to line, right? I'm going to go to line here, right? So we can set the stroke to line. And we could leave the brush hardness if we want to. We could turn it back down. It's kind of up to you. I'm going to make my brush a lot smaller, right? So remember, left bracket makes that smaller. Remember, the bracket keys are in between P and Enter on your keyboards. There's kind of two of them, a left and a right. And with line on, what I could do is I could do this. See how it draws a little line out? And it sculpts that. In this case, I'm going to invert it and maybe turn the strength up on it more. And you see how we could start to draw little lines in super quick and easy? Once again, for some of you guys that saw Mudbox with me last term when we did our spaceship, you know, it has the curve features, which Stabilize Stroke kind of really takes care of for us here. But it didn't really ever have a great line stroke, whereas Blender does. So you'll see that this is super, super awesome, right? So you actually have a line stroke option, which is truly pretty awesome inside of Blender. That can allow you to do some neat stuff like this really, really easily. So really, kind of this video, I wanted to focus on showing you guys, like we said, the masking, right? That guy, and then the kind of mesh filter, inflate. But then I just wanted to show you guys that you have a hardness control in the brush menu here. And in the strokes, you can switch between things like drag, dot, and line to do rivets and nice clean lines. And you see this starts to give us a really kind of neat bit of extra detailing on our crab's armor. And that was a big part of what I wanted to show you guys today in this video. Right now we're starting to see we've got some cool little scratch marks and muscle folds, a little bit of like scale detailing on our crab, right? But even our armor now has kind of like you know, kind of a border for it and some nice little groove lines in it and a bit of riveting. Now you'll notice that in this case, because I pulled this out a little bit, right, that this actually is off a little bit, right? So that's one of those things where I can go to my grab brush, right? It's right here. Oops, grab right there. And I'm going to make my brush a lot bigger, right? The right bracket key. There we go. Now if I want to, I can always go back down, right? Go back to the, because the wrench and the screwdriver are kind of your options here for this. And in fact, pretty much everything that's in these is here. So it's kind of up to you and how you want to do it. But the blue wrench, of course, is our modifier, the multi-resolution. And what I could do is I could turn this armor back down to a lower level to make it even easier to shape and pull this back out a little bit. So you see the grab tool is actually very much like kind of a move tool, right? It allows us to just move this in space. So if we need to make this little adjustment after we've done some of the shaping, we can do that. Now, one of the things is if I hit 4 to go back to object mode, and I kind of set this back to kind of be 0 also, you'll see it actually keeps a lot of that shape pretty well. But if you need to, you can always go back to shape and make sure to apply to base. And you see how it actually applies a lot of that shaping as much as it can to the base mesh. You don't have to apply base. You noticed it kind of worked pretty well without it, right? So kind of one of those little things there. Let's go back to 4. Why did that turn the visibility off of that one? Let's go back up here. All right. And of course, we can bring those back up there. Why is it not showing that one? Let's go back to 5. Don't think it deleted that. No, everything's okay. That'd be weird. Back to modeling. Okay, everything's there. All right. Just a temporary glitch. But anyways, you can use grab to reshape and pull out. And there's even things like apply base. In this case, I don't feel like I really needed that for the crab gear, right? As we saw, kind of as we go back to the lower levels, it still holds to the basic primary shape, which is great, right? So whatever shaping you do at these levels applies all the way down even to 0, particularly in 2.9, right? Because this was kind of broken in 2.83 and I think even 2.82. They technically disabled it because it was causing problems, and they were able to finally work it out and get it back to properly working in 2.9. That's one of the reasons I really want you guys to get back into 2.9 so that we have that ability to get you using the multi-resolution at its best, right? But there's some neat features that this stuff has. All right, so that'll be a great place to stop this video. Let me save that. And we'll do a little more on the armor on another video, and then we'll start to talk about baking. So like I said, that'll be a great place to stop for now.